Right, so it is day 55 of my tree planting thing, and don't be alarmed if it looks like I'm growing an extra nose. I've just been stung by a wasp. It's nothing major. So let's get on with it. Today's planting is one I've gone back and forth on a little bit because we do already have quite a few of them, and they do have some complaints against them, but I do find those tend to be a little bit overblown sometimes. And they are a very ornamental tree, which is you know, very popular with a lot of wildlife too. So this is the thoroughly ornamental Flamboyant, Delonix regis. Sometimes it's also called the flame tree, but that also is applied to the Nandi flame or Spathodea. This is a Madagascan tree, whereas that is a native tree, and this is a legume, whereas that is in the Nyeriensis with the sausage tree. This tree, went during the right season, will get absolutely covered in bright red flowers. It's incredibly ornamental. It gets a very ornamental sort of flat top savanna shape, similar to the Brachystegia taxifolia, but rather larger usually. And it does tend to acidify the soil under it deeply, and the easiest solution to that is to make sure you've got a lot of different plants around it planted while it's still small, so it doesn't sort of get a dominance in the first place, and then very often it can get along with a lot of other plants anyway. With a little bit of sort of strategic planting, you can reverse that acidification and sort of soil dominance quite easily anyway. It's not like something like you know, some of the pines, which can be really aggressive about what can and can't take underneath them. It's actually quite forgiving. It's a very hardy, drought-tolerant tree, and again, its flowering happens right in the hottest time of year when it seems just most incongruent that these trees just get covered with these sweet-smelling, brilliant red flowers, which then attract an awful lot of pollinators, but also a lot of beetles that feed on the flowers, which then feed a whole bunch of the ground spiders and the solifuges, which are one of my favourite groups of invertebrates. But that's going in with standard Dracaena fragrans and Kalanchoe fetching with an Aloe nyeriensis, because I thought that really rich red flower would go with a really rich red of the Flamboyant eventually. So yeah, so that should be everything for today. Tune in tomorrow to see what we're doing for day 56. Right, so this is where I was going to be putting today's planting in, and then as I was clearing about a metre from where I was going to put the Delonix, the Flamboyant, I found a small sapling of a rain tree, which is one of the native trees, which I find very, very ornamental. It also, there's a whole complicated story behind the name, which if I find one to plant, I will be getting into at a later date. But yeah, so I thought I'd mark this one out so it can be preserved, but I'm not counting this in the plant, but I will keep an eye on it just out of curiosity's sake.